And hello, everybody, and welcome back to Magical Journey Podcast. I am your host, Ian Cahoon. And before we get started tonight, I want to, first of all, uh, give a shout out to Mystical, Mystical Mountain Creations. Wow. Once again, thank you. Always keep hydrated. Thanks to you guys. With that said, how'd you guys like the new intro? Short, sweet, and simple, right? No extended countdown. No seriously long crap. So that's kind of where we're going to go with opening from here on out. Is to make sure that we keep things as simple as possible on all of those levels. All right, tonight. First of all, if you are joining us for the first time, don't forget to like, share, and hit that subscribe button. I know that a large majority of you guys who are watching the show are not subscribing. It costs nothing to subscribe. It's a very simple process. You just hit the button and you're there. I'd appreciate it. It helps a lot. Thank you guys for watching the show, for keeping yourselves informed, and for making me part of your world. Tonight, I want to tell you guys that tonight, personally, for me, is a big deal because growing up, one of the people who really impacted my life early on is someone who we're going to be talking about tonight, and that's Lorraine Warren, because she was the first person who I ever met who had similar things going on in her world that I did, who gave me a positive person, a positive statement to cling on to about who I was and what I'm about in this part of my life. So when the tides kind of reeled into me, bumping into Chris, her grandson, online, it really opened up a moment for me. So getting him on the show tonight was something that I worked for, because it fell into place in a very magical way. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this, but I want to bring Chris on. But I want you guys to give a warm welcome to this grandson of Ed and Lorraine Warren, Chris McKinnell. This is what you know. What
you just asked.
I just asked. This is why I just asked, because I knew I was going to look. I don't even know how to pronounce my own name half the time. So, Chris, as if we need a big introduction here. Some people do, actually.
Of course.
Tell us a little bit about you, who you are, and throw in a little bit of promotion about what you're doing, too.
Okay. I don't expect people to know who I am. It's very silly to think that you're famous just for being a grandson. But my name is Chris McKinnell. I'm the director of the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research, which is an organization started with my grandmother about 12 years ago when the first Conjuring movie came out. We wanted to go global, and I wanted to keep their name alive. I've been doing this work now for 44 years, since I was 16 years old with my grandfather. I have lived in over 100 places around the world investigating how the paranormal manifests, how different cultures and different spiritual paths deal with those manifestations, and also studying the mechanisms behind the phenomena. I don't accept the superstitious explanations that we put on these things. I look for more grounded explanations. It doesn't mean I don't believe in the phenomena. It doesn't mean I don't believe in spirits. I do, absolutely. I have interacted with many, many, many spirits in my life, including my grandmother. But it does mean that although I know the phenomenon is real, I am still a skeptic when it comes to how we explain it. So in a nutshell, that's kind of who I am. And I'm currently living in South America, studying the ways that people work with the paranormal here.
Wow, yeah, because you've done a lot of global, like, you've gone a lot of places.
Yeah. I spent 2 years in the poorest country in the world in West Africa, a country called Mali, under a military dictatorship. Studying animism while I was with the Peace Corps. I've walked the streets of Cairo and the City of the Dead and had encounters with jinn. I've studied with the Dalai Lama and hiked the Himalayas and learned in the temples. I've been blessed. I hiked the jungles of Colombia and worked with the Kogi people and learned their ways of dealing with things. And it amazes me because every one of them has effective ways of dealing with the paranormal. It isn't as though one religion has the instruction manual on how to do it. I don't think that matters. It's all about your connection with God and your faith and your focus that makes it work.
Wow. Yeah, and one of my moms says that she is familiar with you and that you are amazing. That's, I gotta agree, Denise, very amazing. Let's talk for a moment before we get too off track with where I want to go with this. Uh, let's talk about your grandparents for a moment, because obviously they were kind of responsible for, well, your current situation of being alive.
And a lot more. They were my inspiration and my mentors, obviously.
Exactly. So what were some of your earliest memories of your grandparents?
My very earliest one was being locked in the museum when I was 3 years old. And my grandfather being in the back room, hearing me, it was nighttime, hearing me screaming, and he came running and got me out of there immediately. That was my first memory. I mean, the man he wasn't even 40 years old. He was still a kid as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I'm 60.
Right. Was there, I think that's one of the things that because a lot of people are like unfortunately equate the characters in the movie with the reality. We know that that's not necessarily true, obviously, but this is the exposure a lot of people have had, unfortunately. I have to say that honestly, you could tell in the interviews and so forth that they were very connected, but it wasn't like, I mean, looking back at times like that, a grandfather was not exactly the great romantic either in some way. He very stern and very, very
Oh, no,
grounded.
not stern. No.
Grounded, is that the way I'm looking at it?
You see, when you see him getting angry
Mhm.
on film, that's because somebody's challenging him and his beliefs. He knows these things are real. He didn't necessarily deal with it as well as he should have or could have. But no, he was a joker. My grandfather, he loved practical jokes. And my grandmother was far sweeter in the real world than you would ever imagine from her videos. And I know the videos, she looks adorable and sweet as can be. She was never somebody serious at home. I mean, she wasn't a joker ever, but she was just dripping with joy and happiness and love. You walk into the house and, oh dear, would you like a grilled cheese and tomato sandwich? I can make it for you right now. Would you like a cake? I'll make that for you. It's like, Graham, don't worry, sit, relax. I just want to see you.
Tell them the restaurant story. I love the restaurant story.
I'm sorry, which one are we talking about?
Where you guys went into the restaurant and
oh my God, that story. Oh my God. Look, you have to understand that it's not the happy story that Daniel's making this out to be. My fiance had just died, and my mother and my grandmother insisted on my going out to dinner at Outback Steakhouse the night before the funeral. And my grandmother gets up and she starts walking around to every table in the restaurant. Hello, dears. How are you? My name's Lorraine Warren. I'm here because my grandson, his fiance just died of cancer. I was like, Graham, what are you doing? But that's what she was. You couldn't go into the grocery store for eggs without her being in there for an hour and a half. She would talk to everyone.
The wisdom in that, though, was that you probably were very distracted at the time and weren't so in your head about things.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. It's like, this is the thing. This is why I was laughing, because it's like, it's beautiful wisdom. And that's the way that a lot of people, I feel like, that I've talked to, people who met her, that's what they came away with, was that there was a beautiful, simple, perfect wisdom about her.
Beautiful, simple, perfect. That's my grandmother.
Yeah. So I do have to ask you, though, what's up with the chickens?
My grandmother loves her chickens, still does. I know she's gone, but she's not.
Mm-hmm.
But it was always animals. Didn't matter what the animal was. They both of them, my grandparents both rescued animals all the time. Actually, my favorite story of my grandfather, it was a winter's day. He had driven past. He had seen this poor dog wrapped around a tree with a chain in a muddy, icy puddle, long hair, just covered in mud. It obviously had not been allowed in the house for a long time. And he walks up, he unhooks it, goes to the front door, bangs on it. The guy comes to the door and he says, "You just lost your dog." And he brought it home and he named the dog Duke after John Wayne. Great dog. I loved him. But my grandmother, there was this horrible white chicken that haunted our neighborhood, or her neighborhood. He was called Einstein because he had this shock of feathers on top of his head. He looked just like a chicken Einstein. And he would attack anybody until one day a dog got him and mangled him very badly, hurt his back. He couldn't take care of himself. And my grandmother decides she's going to take care of this animal. And for a year, she uses an eyedropper full of Gatorade, red Gatorade, dripping it into his mouth to keep him alive. He had red all down his chest. He looked like a bloody, evil. Ugh. But once he was better, she built this beautiful home out on the porch. He came in at night. And all of a sudden, this hen shows up, jumps out of a tree, and joins this rooster, Einstein. She called him Miss Hannah. They ended up having 2 rooster sons. My grandmother went out and got them mates as well. And she kept them right up until the time she died. It was amazing. And she kept eating chickens. I was like, Graham, what are you doing? Oh, that doesn't matter, dear.
This was one of the things that, like, really, for those of us who were going through very dark times, and I was going through a very dark time in my early years, uh, this is one of the things that we looked to her for, was even though you didn't always see these things in the interviews, those of us who knew that there was more, much more there. And she projected that energy outward to people. She knew what she was doing. This is what I'm saying. Very intelligent woman, her wisdom and her intelligence was way beyond what you saw on the big screen when you were watching her on Oprah and whatever. I can't remember all the shows she was on at one point.
Sally Jesse Raphael, was something Downey, Morton Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Oh, terrible programs back in the 80s. But they were on Merv Griffin, they were on Mike Douglas, probably Phil Donahue. I don't remember for sure. They were on so many of those programs. The Tonight Show.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. The Tonight Show, which Johnny Carson would ban people from his show a lot of times, but they were on more than once, right?
I couldn't say for sure. Honestly, they were my grandparents. I wasn't following them in the media.
Fair enough. I can see how that goes. So what was, because they did not, just like at first, they were not very well known.
Oh, no.
There's not, unless you are lucky enough to really find good information, there's not a lot about, like, the time period where, the movies try to glamorize the first couple of cases they were on, but very few people knew who they were at that point.
They started in 1947, and they created the New England Society for Psychic Research in 1952. That, and about 1953 is when they started to believe in demons. They didn't even believe in those at first. Everything was just a ghost. They had been, they'd been exposed to it themselves. They had witnessed these things, and they wanted to know more, especially my grandfather. And one thing I warn people about, when you look at these old videos of my grandparents, when you read their books, which they never wrote, some of those books were written well by other writers. Others are garbage, to be quite honest. But you're only seeing a snapshot in time. You're not seeing where they ended up by the 1990s. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these things. They're not instruction manuals for you. That would be like looking at documentaries on medical science from the 1970s and 80s and going out and trying to practice. You shouldn't. That's not the way you should learn.
Exactly. And now, unlike then, there's a lot of different ways to learn.
Yes.
Let me emphasize this for you guys. When these two young people started out, believe it or not, Ed and Lorraine were young once. They didn't just come onto the scene as somebody's parent and somebody's grandparent. These young people came into an environment, into doing what they do at a time when you didn't have a lot of printed material. You didn't have online classes to go to. You learned the hard way.
Trial and error. The first 25 years of their career, nobody knew who they were. No one. They worked in complete anonymity. That's not quite fair. They had their first lecture in around 68. So that would have been about 20 years after they got started. And they loved that. They really enjoyed that. And that's kind of how they started learning. If we get out there, then we can start helping people more and reach people who need help. By the time the Lindley Street case broke in 72 or 73, that was in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where I was born. They really leaned into the publicity as a means of letting people know they were there to help. Sometimes they also use publicity to shame the church into helping, because many archdioceses will not help unless you force them to. And being Catholic, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's important I emphasize my grandparents worked with every religion in the world. But if you're a Catholic, they're going to work with the Catholic Church if they can. If they can't, they'll go with Methodist or Lutheran.
Right, right. And for those of you who are watching the links below, the link to the, let me pull that back up again. The Warren Files is definitely a very good resource to go on and check out some very, very good information on there. You have collected a good. Are you still working on that, the Warren Files?
Not so much right now. We're working on a documentary right now, but we will eventually. It's just I had so many good people offer so much good information. Some of it's a little dated, especially my own work, because the stuff that I was doing 10 years ago, I've learned more since then. This is a field of research. We're constantly adapting our theories and our beliefs and our understanding based on new evidence. If you don't, well, you're not doing anybody any service.
Right, right. Well, I think that's one of the things that's very important. That was one of the things I learned from them, myself too, is you don't stay in one spot. You don't always refuse to see new evidence. You evolve.
Right.
Because I gotta tell you, when I first started out, I walked in like any young, teen. I was like 19, 20 years old, investigator, all like cocky, thinking that I knew everything there was to know.
I remember
And
being that person. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing how much we know when we're young and how
Oh, yeah.
stupid we become as we get older.
Exactly. And the first couple of investigations I went on, I was sure that I would have the answer right away. And I knew that I knew. That was my whole mindset. And about halfway through the first hour, the first 30 minutes of that investigation, I was like, I thought to myself, remember when you were watching TV the other day and Ed said this about that and how he was changing his thoughts on stuff because of that? This is what he was talking about. He probably ran across something like this that didn't make any sense. It went against the grain of everything that he thought he knew. And he had to conform to the idea that he didn't know as much as he thought. And that's where I was at that moment. It was like, oops, what you do now?
Yeah. It's amazing because I look back at my early cases where, I was told by my grandfather this was demonic, and that was it. That was my explanation. I moved on. But now I look back and I'm shaking my head saying, you know what? I wish I could go back and ask questions because I don't know what that was. And to this day, they're like the Smurl house. I don't know what that was. And I don't have the ability to go back and investigate it again. So what levitated me over those stairs? What made this, what made those pig noises? What slammed the door? there's so many things that happened in that household that I cannot explain. And unfortunately, I can't go back to find out.
Right, right. That's one of the things too that you is really hard for people to understand. Is it's very rare that you can go back to something, even if you want to re-experience or to learn more. Those experiences are very few and far between. There's places that I would love to go back to. And like, oh yeah, now that I know this, you know, or even be able to like take better notes on or whatever. But I think, and let's dive into this for a moment. The movie is coming up soon. The new movie, the last one in the series. Don't get me wrong. I love the movies. I actually have the entire universe collection of them.
You got me beat. I don't own any of them.
I like it because I like the artwork involved in what they did. I like their interpretation. They have just enough of truth in there um, to be able to say, okay, so this part is something factual. Using the character Frenchie in the movie that was actually, unfortunately, that was a part of a very um,
Terrible case.
a terrible case, but it did actually happen, not the way that it
Nothing.
came
Wait,
out.
wait. Let's not lead people here.
Mhm.
Nothing in the movie The Nun is real. Nothing
Right,
except in the credits, you see the exorcism of the man we learn is Maurice Theriault.
right,
That was real. I was there for that. I'm the guy protecting the bishop during that exorcism.
right,
But my grandfather was actually having his heart attack during that exorcism. It wasn't like in the movies where it happens during David Glotzel's exorcism. They switch things around. They change details. The Annabelle movies are complete fantasies. Annabelle, of course, is real. She's been in my life since I was 5,
mm,
but it's not it's not anything like the movies at all.
right, right. Well, that's what I really want to get to is that, you know, they touch on just enough of stuff that's real um, to give you, okay, so they at least borrowed from reality to get a storyline. Um, Artistically, the movies are very good. Obviously, factually, I mean, the news isn't even real. So what are we talking about? Um, what I do want to talk, let's talk about. We're going to talk about a couple of things, though, because this is going to bring it into where I want to go next. Um, you talked about Annabelle, uh, and I want to get a little bit of your insight on the truth behind Annabelle because there's a lot of garbage online about that right now.
Yes. Yeah, there is. Annabelle is on tour right now. I think that's dangerous as hell. I've spoken out against it. It's certainly not made me popular with my family, but it's something I know for a fact my grandmother is not happy with at all. She has made it clear, not just to me, but to several other very gifted people. Annabelle is not what people think it is. It's not some all powerful demon that is causing fires on plantations and helping prisoners escape and starting tornadoes. None of that. But if you are close to Annabelle and if you're interacting with that energy, it can attach to you and it can hurt you. That's a reality. Annabelle is not a demon possessed doll. I know that's the story. And that is what my grandparents believed with all their hearts. But they were looking at this phenomena through their own Catholic beliefs. I learned that religion is a wonderful tool for dealing with the paranormal, but it is a terrible tool for examining the paranormal. What happened, as far as I understand it, and I may change my views in 5 years with more information, but my current understanding is this: that two young nursing students owned this doll. It had been given to them by one of the nurses' mothers. A woman named Debbie owned the doll. She loved this thing, carried it down to breakfast every day, talked to it as if it was alive, loved this doll, put so much energy into it. Both the girls did. And one day the doll levitated its hands up, or arms up onto the kitchen counter. And they thought, ooh, there must be a ghost in it. Let's have a seance. So they contacted someone that they thought was a talented medium. And this is one of the reasons I don't trust psychics without evidence to back it up. Mm-hmm. Through a series of seances, this woman came up with the idea that it was a ghost named Annabelle Higgins, a little girl who had died in front of the house and was just looking for someone to love her. Of course, two nursing students, they're going to latch onto that story and give it even more love, more energy. They bought it a bracelet that's still on it to this day. And it started acting like a little girl. They would go to work at the Hartford Hospital, and when they came home, the doll wasn't where they left it. It was playing hide and seek with them. It was leaving notes on parchment paper with crayons saying things like, "Miss me? Want to play?" But as they started to feel like they're constantly being watched, they felt creeped out, and the energy started to change. And that's when the doll started being scarier. It started leaving messages like, help me. One afternoon, Debbie's boyfriend was sleeping on the couch, and he woke up and he said, I just had a dream that Annabelle was crawling up me and was choking me to death. And he said, he walked over to the doll, which was sitting in a chair, picks it up, throws it across the room, says, "You're a stupid doll. You couldn't hurt anyone." And just like a child throwing a tantrum, the doll reacted. It started shaking the walls, pounding on the walls. The chair it had been sitting in shot across the room, and the young man was clawed across the chest. Now, of course, everybody's terrified. They're immediately getting a hold of, I want to say Father Tybalt. No, that's wrong. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. But he was a Lutheran priest in Hartford. He happened to know my grandparents, and they agreed to immediately go in. When my grandfather was going in, even before he got there, he said God would not allow a child to inhabit a doll. So he had already made a determination without any evidence that this was not a child. I have actually heard of cases where children will attach to a doll as a means of staying close to their family. So that turns out to not be true either. But my grandmother, with her training, she felt that negative energy. And this is how she taught me too. Anytime you feel that heavy negative energy, oh, that's demonic. So that's what she decided it was. I think it's something called, well, it started out as something called a tulpa, which is a spirit. It is a real spirit. Don't get me wrong. It's not a figment of anyone's imagination. But it is a spirit created by living energy that then takes on a life of its own, similar to the way a poltergeist can sometimes manifest. And it has over time become something known as an egregore. Again, a spirit created, but this time through many people's beliefs. Today, millions of people around the world are alternately terrified of this doll or love this doll. And they're feeding it energy all the time. That's a chaotic mix. And I'm very worried about how it's manifesting in people's lives. Even if this doll on display is not the actual Annabelle, and it may not be, but if it's not, that doesn't really matter because people believe it is. And if they're a psychologically vulnerable person, they can believe that they are going to be harmed by it. And the people who are taking this doll on tour don't really know what they're doing. And they're pushing people up against the glass and having them touch the glass. It's like, no, you don't do those things. My grandfather made a world famous sign, positively do not open. And they don't care because all they care about is making money.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta tell you, when I found out like Annabelle is going to be, if they haven't already done it, in Kentucky, not
That was a while ago, I think.
was that a while ago? I know that it was like gonna be in an area that was accessible for me to actually get to. And I said, that's nice. Next.
Yeah.
Because I just don't want to be part of that. So now let's talk for a moment about this case that the final chapter of The Conjuring is based on. And there's a reason why I want to do this. Because you were actually involved in this case. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't your grandparents initially send you as somebody else?
Well, I'm pretty sure they were there before me, but they didn't do the overnight work anymore. That they sent the young guys to do that, and I was in college at the time in my last year of school, and I only had a motorcycle. It was wintertime, so the poor young man that I had picked, he had no experience whatsoever, but he wanted to go, so I took this young man named Doug to this incredibly haunted house. And we were there. I was there probably 3 times, I'm guessing, never with my grandparents.
Mhm.
And I had plenty of experiences. I don't remember how the case got started or things like that. I wasn't there for the resolution. All I really remember is my own experiences. I mean, I've had 10,000 cases, or about 10,500 by now. And it's hard for me to keep them all straight. I apologize.
10,000 cases. Look, I can't even get like what I ate yesterday straight with like, so,
That's how I feel.
So Denise did ask a question that's very interesting. Does Annabelle need an exorcism to get rid of that negative energy?
You cannot do an exorcism on anything other than a person. So there are binding rituals you can do. And for years, my grandparents didn't know how to do that.
Hmm.
And Annabelle sat in a rocking chair in the basement. But after a couple of bad experiences, they learned, and that's why the doll was put into that box with a crucifix over the top, with blessed salt, with I think St. Benedict medals placed around it and a rosary inside, all as a way of binding the energy and protecting people from it. The fact that we call this a museum is a misnomer. It's the worst part of my grandparents' legacy because it was never open to the general public. It was always a place to protect people from those energies. It's a prison. And now everything is off on tour, and I'm worried about people. That's not what it's meant for. Maybe for teaching, if you have a place you can put it where there's heavy glass and long distances between the objects, and if you've got information on each of the cases it pertains to, fine, I can see that, but not the way they're doing it. This is a craven money grab. It's a carnival. I've had people go there and tell me about it, and the way they're pushing people through and just hawking whatever garbage they're selling, you can't take it seriously. They're cheapening something very, very real and very dangerous.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I got out of it too. And before we go any further, I want to encourage you guys, those of you that if you've made it this far, leave me a comment telling me what you think about Annabelle and about this whole touring the doll thing, because there's more than just Annabelle on this tour. And that's the other thing people are unaware of whenever they go to these things is not only are they dealing with the energy of Annabelle, but they're dealing with other things that they don't even have a clue what it is that is going to be there with this doll.
Exactly.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
But you know, I can say the same thing about people who want to go into haunted asylums or prisons, hospitals. If you're one of the unlucky ones whose energy is attractive to one of those disturbed souls, you might have somebody coming home with you. And millions of people play with Ouija boards every year, and they don't get affected. The board itself is nothing, but your intention to connect with spirit is everything. And if your negative energy is out there, you're much more vulnerable. And that's what I try to warn people about.
Exactly, exactly. And I think it's very important for people to understand learning to crawl before you start walking, if you want to do these things, is very important. So learning about protecting yourself, learning about you is very important. Because
Yes.
if you don't know you well enough to know if you get in this situation, how to protect yourself, how not to react to things, and so forth, then you are going to have a very bad day, most likely, because ignorance is definitely a doorway to letting in the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Ignorance is a very good way of doing it. So
is fear. And this is
fear.
why people, why I do presentations is because I want to arm people with the right tools to protect themselves and to protect others. The worst thing is to go into someone's home, not knowing what you're doing, stir up trouble, and then leave. I can't imagine a worse sin. Well, in the paranormal world, I suppose.
Right, right. So I brought up Annabelle and the one case there
The Smurls.
to Smurls to bring in a very important thing here and kind of like bring us to the next part of this interview is yes, we love your grandparents. We appreciate and absolutely adore their work. But there is a whole new legacy that they've left behind, which is what you really are about in a sense, because your work is your own thing, inspired by their work, but you've got some ideas that have advanced because, well, frankly, science has advanced since the early days and even the latter days of your grandmother. So tell us a little bit about some of the things that really separate what you're doing now from what we know of the past of the Warren family.
Well, I don't know how new this is. I mean, I did start this with my grandmother 12 years ago, and I have been doing this my whole life. But I was lucky. I had two amazing mentors. My grandparents didn't have anybody at all. They looked up to one man in England named Harry Price, but he was already gone by the time they were actually doing any real work. The last days of Harry were in the 1950s. We got to meet him in the 1980s, but he was a ghost by then. So it wasn't quite the same. But I was able to take what they taught me and the tools they gave me and the outlook they gave me and move forward with it. That's all I've done. It's a continuation of their work. It may sound different, and it is. It's radically different. I don't believe in demons. I also have done exorcisms that have been successful. My grandfather didn't believe he could do an exorcism. I agree with him. He probably couldn't. He was a far more earthy individual than I am. Um, but I do believe in ghosts. I do interact with ghosts, the same as my grandmother. I take great joy in helping a spirit to pass over, or to helping them with unresolved issues and unfinished business. That's a beautiful time for me. Um, I don't use the term ghost hunter like my grandparents did. I don't hunt people, so I have a ethical reason for not liking that particular term. I consider myself, I guess, a paranormal social worker. I help both the living and the dead equally, and I will do whatever I can to help someone, even if it's not paranormal. I've learned, I learned on the Maurice Theriault case, the Frenchie case, is there are underlying issues that make a person vulnerable that may not be there for the average person. But if we don't deal with those problems, whether it's domestic violence, drug abuse, PTSD, mental illness, whatever it might be, we have to deal with that as well. Otherwise, yes, I can close that spiritual doorway, but it's going to reopen because all of the things that make you vulnerable are still there. That was one major change that took my grandfather till the late 80s to really accept. He, from the 1970s, with parapsychology getting started, he hated that. He didn't want to hear about psychology. And when I got into psychology in college, he was not happy about it. But over time, he learned. That's the thing that people don't know about my grandparents. They were willing to change completely. My grandfather, when I grew up, I wasn't allowed to listen to rock and roll music because that was the devil's music, according to my grandfather. You know, Barry Manilow was the best I could get. Conway Twitty. Uh, Boy, I was not popular at school when I had my radio show. But my grandfather used to think that witchcraft and Satanism were identical. It took him a long time to get past that prejudice and understand differently. And I've learned far more about that subject matter than he ever did, really. For instance, did you know that there is a cave in Australia where they practiced the same ritual for 12,000 years until the 1800s, the Aborigine people? Why would they perform this ritual if it wasn't actually working? This is evidence that that ritual can focus intention to a tangible outcome.
Right, right. So Denise is asking another question that's kind of important, I think, and Maria, hey, um, how do you know when people are real or fake? I mean, is it an energy that you pick up?
Mine?
Yeah.
The truth is, up until in my 20s, I was reading auras all the time.
Mhm.
And people would ask me, oh, give me a reading. And I would love to do it because it made me feel special. Until I started scaring the crap out of them because I saw things they didn't want me to see. And I learned to shut myself down, except for my work. I have been taken advantage of so many times in my life because I will not let the evil of this world make me cynical. And I've lost everything I own 3 times because I trusted people repeatedly. And I've lost everything. I live out of a backpack today, and I'm happy with that. I don't have a problem with that. things can become chains to hold you back. I'm free. But I think today I'm a little more open to using my abilities to just make sure I'm dealing with somebody honest. But I still hesitate. I'm learning to listen to myself more and trust myself more. I used to just want to trust everyone until they gave me a reason not to, but that's just foolish. It's not the right way to do things.
Yeah, I've learned that the hard way, unfortunately. Um, you, so the Warren Foundation, the Warren Legacy Foundation, which the inspiration for that obviously came a lot from your grandmother. What exactly do you do with that? What is the, I guess what my question is really is, what's the point of the foundation?
We help people who believe they are being troubled by the paranormal, number one. And we do that all over the world. We've got good people all over the world. But well, also it's education. One of the greatest gifts my grandfather gave me was helping me learn how to overcome my fear. And I know that fear is the real enemy. Ignorance is the enemy. When you hear footsteps in the hallway or when your keys go missing, that doesn't mean the devil is after you. It means your grandmother is trying to get your attention and say, hey, look over here. I'm right here. I'm letting you know I'm here. But your fear takes that beautiful experience and turns it into something negative. So education is a big part of what we do as well. I think of the paranormal as something very empowering, very hopeful. Yes, it can be deadly, just like electricity can be deadly, but electricity can also light up the world.
Mhm.
And I think the paranormal can do the same. When we let go of our fear, I believe nothing will be able to stop us.
Exactly, because that is where, and I really want to bring this home in a way for people in my area, because you guys got to understand that there is a very big story that you're taught a lot in church about Jesus walking on water and one of his disciples getting all excited about wanting to go out there and do it too, got the first step on, and then started going down right away because he realized, oh, I'm walking on water. I can't do this. Fear and doubt cost a really great opportunity with that.
Yes.
So, it, we live in a world where where a lot of people try to get you to choose fear on a daily basis. Fear is counterproductive to everything. So this is one of the reasons why I really like the idea of the Warren Foundation. The education, absolutely important. Learning and teaching people about how to overcome the fairy tales, the dark stuff that we've been taught. Um, you guys also, you mentioned you help people who are in need. I do know that there's information on the website how to contact. Actually, Pam just pulled that up for me, didn't you? How to contact folks there to if you're seeking help with any type of paranormal activity that's like out of your control to deal with.
Also, and you should, I mean, maybe I shouldn't mention this, but you know about this as well. We also have a psychic support group online for people who are gifted. And all of our services are free and confidential. Now, yes, if you sign up for a Zoom session, those are not. I do have to pay my rent. So presentations that I do charge for those. but for any help of any sort, that's always going to be free. And we do have a psychic support group with over 900 members around the world who are there to share what they know or to learn how to deal with their anxiety from the energies they pick up, learn how to ground themselves, learn how to take back control of their lives. And I think it's a very supportive environment. And I invite anybody who's gifted to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to share that link with them.
I do want to point out too that in the description below, there is a link to be able to sign up for Zoom. I would really encourage you guys to do that, especially if you want well, anything that you want to know in this presentation will be there. Trust me. I watched it the other day myself. It was worth every moment of it. And just it's a very good first step into getting involved, finding out more information about the Warren Foundation.
I consider it like a Psych 101 course.
It definitely has.
Really is only the introduction. I can't distill decades of knowledge into a 2-hour meeting, but it's a good start, and it leads us to other presentations that we might want to do later. Either, ghost stories, which I know a lot of people just want to hear ghost stories, and for those who are really interested in the work, we want to expand and offer some real graduate level kinds of presentations.
Right. That's one of the things too, that the Warren Foundation is continuously, there's an application process to go through for this, but they're continuously looking, for people who want to be part of the foundation.
You have to have experience. You have to be
Yes.
well and humble. We're looking for people who are doing this not for the clicks and likes, but because this is God's work. I don't care if you're a pagan, if you're Jewish, if you're Hindu or Muslim. We embrace all spiritual paths. As the Hindu proverb says, there are many paths up the mountain. It's only the fool running around the bottom saying you're going the wrong way that never gets any closer to the top. So if you look at our logo, it's got many different religious symbols all around the world, because just as my grandparents taught me, they all work. And we want to embrace everybody and help everybody regardless of their religion.
Exactly. The other thing I want to point out is my personal experience with the support group is that they are very kind and they're very supportive. As a matter of fact, there's a couple of new mods at least in there.
Four new ones.
That are, and they are already on the ball, and they're getting to know people, responding to people's questions, answers, comments right away. So that is a resource. Definitely, I would encourage you, if you are somebody who is gifted, and whether you just found out, whether you're questioning maybe, what's going on in your life.
Or maybe you know a lot and you'd like to share it.
Exactly. Then reach out and find out about, because I'm going to tell you, trying to go it alone is not the best answer always. Okay. We don't need to live in a solitary world all of our lives. This is one of the things that Lorraine taught me at an early age for being her, was boom, I'm out here. I'm telling you guys that I'm out here. I'm a real person. See me and understand. It was like, oh, well, if, this sweet lady who's probably not as tall, and she's definitely not. What was it? I was like, almost, I was heading toward 5'11", but like, so she's definitely not that tall, and definitely um, not
I think
frail, but
5'8", I'm guessing.
yeah,
She wasn't short, but she was just an elegant, beautiful, sweet
yeah,
angel. She was my
yeah.
angel.
And yet she was bold enough to come forward and say, "Here I am. This is what I can do."
Well, I think my grandfather had a lot to do with that. She learned early on to be quiet, but one thing about my grandfather, the man was never quiet.
True, true. They were definitely a it was a story. It was a story that yes, the movies definitely glamorize things a lot, but if you ever got to see, or if you ever get to see the interviews, you see it in their look at each other. You see how they relate to each other and how they bounce off of each other in the
Yeah.
interviews. There is a magic there. It was meant to be.
Although here's an amusing thing though. In the 70s, when they were starting to do interviews, they used to step on each other's on each other all the time for that microphone. It's like, Gramps, would you just let each other talk? You're embarrassing me. I mean, hey, I'm 10 years old. What am I gonna say?
Right, right. I can just imagine what that. 'Cause, so the other thing I want to encourage you guys about, if you are someone, because I know some of you have had experiences where you met the Warrens at some point in your lives. Chris shares some very, very good photos from time to time on Facebook as well. Uh, the Christmas photos are probably my favorite.
Me too.
If you get an opportunity, follow him. You'll see some things from time to time on there that will make your heart sing.
If you go to my Facebook page, there's an entire album of over 200 photos of my grandparents. So there's plenty of great photos for you to take a look at. By the way, the website I don't think has come up is warrenfiles.com or warrenlegacyfoundation.com. And just go there if you need help or if you'd like to apply to the foundation.
Definitely, definitely so. As we're starting to round out the night, I want to ask you, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you really wanted to bring up tonight?
Well, I think the first thing I want to say is if you're interested in this work, do the groundwork first, the foundational work first. Learn about psychology, learn about quantum physics, learn about the people that you're going to be helping. Half of your job is figuring it out. Half. Don't ever go into a home and say, oh, you've got a demon. Number one, it's a culturally loaded term that has no meaning. One thing I've learned in my travels around the world is these things will always manifest according to your cultural and spiritual beliefs, not always as Beelzebub or whatever. If you're not Christian, and if nobody Christian has been in that area, then that manifestation will never be Christian. It's going to be whatever the people are there. And that says more about us and our power to manifest our fears than and what we can do when we let go of fears. If you can have curses, you can have miracles. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Let go of the fear, go into it with humility. Remember this, according to NASA, there are more living worlds in the universe than grains of sand on Earth. Be comfortable with your ignorance, because Humanity, we are storytellers. We want to put a label, slap a label on every single thing that we encounter. But the truth is, we don't know. And we have to accept that. You cannot immediately say, oh my God, it's that. Because it probably isn't that, whatever that is. Take your time, learn, and do everything you can to empower the people you're there to help. You know, minimize their fear, give them tools to raise the energetic vibrations of the home. And here's one important piece of advice for anyone listening: never, ever, ever investigate your own home. You are going to put all of your energy into that. You're going to manifest something powerful because you can't leave it. And then you're going to jump at every single little noise, assuming that it's paranormal. Yes, you might have something paranormal going on in the house, but as soon as you believe in that, then everything, you start to blame everything on the paranormal. And it isn't. Most of the things that happen around you are perfectly natural. It's the squirrel in the gutter, not some demon playing drums on the roof.
Exactly. I think it's very important for people to understand, probably the hardest thing right off the bat that I learned was, like you said, don't jump to conclusions. Don't assume you know everything. Be well informed before you go into some place. Know what you need to know. Don't go in with a blank notebook.
And don't let a psychic lead an investigation ever. They let them go through, let them do their walkthrough, let them write down all their findings or record all their findings, but you don't even look at those until you've done your initial investigation. You do not want research bias. You have a team, let that team do its job, and then compare notes with the psychic's notes and see if there's any overlap. Because even the best psychic is only right 60% of the time. And that's something my grandmother taught me. I used to say 70%, but she's right.
Right, exactly. I do want to emphasize, okay, we're not trying to minimize the obviously, because that would be kind of self-defaming in a sense for me to sit there and try to minimize the importance of people with psychic gifts. But
No, I'm a medium, for God's sake. I just don't trust without evidence.
Right. Because there's a lot of people out there. I've seen this time and time again. There's a lot of people out there that will sit there, and I've had some on my show. You guys have watched the interviews, if you followed me from the beginning, that will sit there and tell you that they are 100% right, and they are more than what we should be claiming we are. So
you can have a night that you're 100%, but you're going to have nights where you're 0% as well.
Right. And that's the thing of it. We have to be rational, and we have to think logically about things. Your car is not guaranteed to start just because you turn it on.
No.
There's food for thought. Okay. Warren Foundation website. Pam, you put that up just a moment ago.
It's warrenlegacy.com, warrenlegacyfoundation.com, warrenfiles.com. Any of those will work. They'll get you to the same place.
Yes.
Or you can just look for me on Facebook and I'll get you there.
There it is. Okay. So there's the link to the Warren Legacy Foundation. I cannot emphasize that enough. Facebook. You guys want to connect with Chris on Facebook for those pictures, if nothing else. I promise you it's worth it. Denise, to answer your question, yes, I will get Chris back on. He is a busy man. It's going to get very busy coming up because of the movie. I mean,
I'm not in it, so
No, but I mean, let's be real. The movies really do. The movies have brought out a lot of attention to these cases over again. Like
yeah.
you can't even now you can't turn on to YouTube and not find something about the Conjuring house. You know, I just saw something on my YouTube feed today about the Conjuring house.
You know
So
what? I do have something I want to share with you.
yeah,
Not go back and reinvestigate homes where things have been closed. That's a terrible idea. My grandparents, this 28 days later crap that was spouted as being something my grandfather came up with, that's bullcrap. They never would have condoned going back into places where they have solved a case, because you're going in there expressly to try to connect with the paranormal again. You're opening a door again. It's an awful idea.
it really is. It really, really is. And it, my question for that is, if somebody has a healed wound, are you going to try to reopen it? Why would you do that?
Exactly.
It's not really going to be beneficial to anybody. So, again, I mean, if you are wanting to, if you're wanting to do investigation or research, or preferably research uh, for beginners, I would suggest staying in that realm for a while, researching what you need to know, and then doing research to find out what people have found out already before you get involved in trying to dig into your own stuff.
Be
If you want,
careful of who you learn from.
there's that.
Don't go to the reality TV shows. They're not real. Don't watch all the TikTok videos and things like that. Look, it's going to sound awful and egotistical, but if you really want to get a good idea, go ahead and take my presentation. At least I can only promise you I will be as completely honest as you heard me tonight. I am not somebody who sugarcoats. I'm not somebody who shades the truth. It's important to me that I never, ever saying anything that's not 100% true. And I will tell you if I don't know.
Exactly. And we're talking about a couple of decades of history behind all of this knowledge too, right?
4.5.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never had a chance.
I mean, given the circumstances, not really. One of the things that I do want to, before we close out, because it's important for people to understand, like, because I think a lot of people want to base a lot of what they know, especially people who are younger and don't really never had the opportunity to really follow your grandparents when they were alive. The reality of the situation is a lot, most of the things that you will be seeing in these movies are inaccurate.
Oh, yes.
Case in point, uh, I mean, you were your mother's child. How much of the stuff in the movies about your mother is accurate?
None of it. My mother's not psychic. My mother has nothing at all to do with the paranormal. She's terrified of it. She's avoided it her entire life.
Zero,
Yeah.
zero of it is accurate information.
I was
So
5 years old when Annabelle came home. My mom was my mom.
yeah. So keep that in mind. It's entertainment is what it is, peppered with like little bits of truth here and there every once in a while. So, but always remember that behind all the lore, all of the fantasy, all of the Hollywood creation, there is truth.
Yes.
and seek that truth out.
I will say James Wan loved my grandmother, and he respected her even before he met her. In the movie Insidious, the main female character is named Lorraine in honor of my grandmother. His movies are a love letter to my grandparents. They are not documentaries, but they are made with love.
100%. I gotta tell you, I've met and I still meet people who will tell me in a heartbeat, I got to meet Miss Lorraine and she just changed my world right there on the spot. And there is a large group of us who are definitely still fans who
Me too.
have imagine that, right? Who have a personal story about where their lives became more enriched by having her in the world. One of the things that I want to stress to you guys is Chris's work, and Chris is definitely, while still a product of that genealogy and a product of that history and a product of learning through these guys, definitely a separate entity, his own path. So while we have things we can learn about the past and we can enjoy the past, let's walk in and embrace the future and the now. And that's what's very important for us to learn tonight too. Um, Again, I will never ever forget the very first time I experienced watching the Warrens on television and the awakening it was in my life. And I know each one of us will always have that first moment where we had that aha with our connection. Okay, again, let's talk about your closing thought for tonight. What is your closing thoughts?
I would just say fear is the enemy, that
Yes.
your faith isn't about your spiritual path. It's about putting your faith in action with empathy and compassion for others. If you do that, you're as close to God as you'll ever hope to get. And when you put positive energy into a home, even a home with a negative haunting, my grandmother taught me this, you've already half solved the problem. So clean your home, get rid of clutter, fill it with laughter and joy, make love, play games together, watch comedies, listen to music that makes you want to sing and dance. That is going to do so much good in that home. That is probably the best closing thought I can come up with.
That's a beautiful thought to leave us with tonight. Chris, if you'll hang up for just a moment, I'm going to close us out, and then I will join you in just a moment. Okay.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the nice young ladies that helped this evening. I appreciate both of you very much.
Thank you for coming on and giving us your time tonight.
Well, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay, guys. Wow. I got to tell you, I feel like this was a moment for me personally tonight in a big way to be able to kind of get closure to a point, to be honest with you, with some things and bring you guys um, a fresh look into an area that has, for the past few years since this whole Conjuring franchise started, uh, has kind of grown into something interesting. We'll say interesting. Um, you've got the resources. I will have links to all the things on the website and on Facebook. So please join us on there and please follow Chris, the foundation there on Facebook. Yes, Tom, you are late. That's okay. You had a busy night. I will talk with you guys again next week. I want to talk to you guys really quickly. Just occurred to me that, you know what? In a month from now, July, August, no, the end of August will be 1 year for me on this platform. So coming up at the end of August, I'm going to be planning a special show for that night. I'm not sure what we're going to do yet, but now that I'm aware of the fact that 1 year mark is coming up, we will do something. So watch, keep your ears open and your eyes open. And as always, may your journey always be magical.
I've waited for so long to see when you come back to me. Through the wars and battles that were lost, we're born again, it's you and me. The rest is history. Past lives. Past lives. Did we dance together on different floors in 1500 or 1504? We must have been lovers, we must have been something.